Hey, call this meeting of the Executive Transition Committee to order. Thanks, everybody. Hope you're having a good Monday. And unique to be meeting on a Monday. Kind of nice. All right. First up on our agenda today is public comment. Do we have anybody here who would like to give public comment? Welcome. Just a reminder to state your name and jurisdiction, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Rebecca Patrick, Allendale. As you begin your work on selecting a new county administrator, I think it's important to highlight the following facts. The county's former administrator, John Gibbs, was hired using a process, or should I say lack of a process, developed and overseen solely by the exact same people sitting here in front of me this afternoon. Your work in hiring that administrator resulted in a lawsuit that is still ongoing and about which the public and even the rest of the commission knows absolutely nothing. And who knows how much money spent on litigation to date, and an unknown amount, but not unreasonably expected to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to settle this case. And more drama and disruption to the work of Ottawa County employees. You have no credibility with the public or Ottawa County staff when it comes to your track record on hiring practices. The members of the Board of Commissioners who are not members of Ottawa Impact asked to have representation on this committee, and you voted them down. Members of the public asked you to form a more representative committee as you begin this important work, and you voted them down too. There is no substitute for having a seat at the table. You know that. Otherwise, you would have gladly included viewpoints other than your own. Ottawa County residents are tired of watching you put partisan politics above all else and above the welfare of the county. They are tired of your inability to work with others. And they are tired of your unwillingness to allow almost half the county to be represented on important committees and boards. You can still change this and gain at least the smallest morsel of credibility for yourselves and for this process by voting to recommend to the commission that you add just one more member to this committee from the commissioners who are not members of Ottawa Impact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? All right, seeing none, then we'll continue on. Next up is approval of agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Okay, we have no consent resolutions, so we'll move right into agenda and action requests. Number one is the election of a committee vice chair. Suggested motion is to elect someone as vice chairperson of the Executive Transition Committee for 2024. Wondering if someone would like to make a motion. Commissioner Belknap.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate my fellow Commissioner Allison Miedema to be the Vice Chair of the Executive Transition Committee for 2024. I'll just reference Commissioner Miedema's excellent leadership during our last 2 years of talent and recruitment activities.
Roger.
Okay, is a motion
Support.
and support. Any additional discussion? Anyone else? I would really welcome your help, Commissioner Miedema.
Glad to help.
Yep. Okay, if there's no other discussion, then all in favor of electing Commissioner Miedema as Vice Chairperson of the Executive Transition Committee for 2024, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carried. Okay, so there you go.
Thank you.
So up next is really the main reason we're here today, talent and recruiting discussion. So I'm just going to open this up to the committee, basically. I did send an email just with some initial thoughts and some documents. And I think essentially what some of our main items to talk about are related to some of the first items in the resolution that created this committee. So the job description of the county administrator, the recruitment profile, what's been done in the past, what it might look like as we move forward. And then the bigger question of using an independent recruiting firm. So we're not really rushed for time or anything. So does anybody want to start with anything in particular? Job description or? And might I say we should probably, when we're done, add any of these documents to the packet so that they're publicly, accessible and easy to find?
So I guess I would just note a couple, a couple comments on some of these documents. So we have a proposed county administrator job posting, and that was created by John Anderson in anticipation of needing this job to be posted. So that's the source of that. We can, of course, still give feedback on, on that document. It's in draft form. I don't personally see any, issues with it at this point, but it's definitely something we can, add to, modify, that kind of thing. And then we have the former
Do you want me to-
executive recruitment profile.
You want me to roll through some of this?
Sure, go
And
ahead.
just kind of
Yep,
put it out for public,
yep.
so that the public can hear it and things like that. And does anybody have another pen? My pen has died. Thanks. Thanks. Okay, so job description lists some of the essential job functions of a county administrator. County administrator shall be responsible for the day-to-day administration and operations of the County of Ottawa, Michigan. The administrative role is a very much a coordinating role, a coordinator. And we have somewhat specialized leadership in, as department heads running the different business units of the county. County administrator shall supervise the operations and performance of county departments and department heads. County administrator shall coordinate various activities of the county, attend and or have department heads attend the regular meetings or regularly at meetings of the board. County administrator shall supervise the preparations and filling or submission of all reports required of the county by law. County administrator is responsible for the future direction of county and county operations by developing a continuing strategic plan for the county and presenting it to the board for approval, for input, really working with the board on that. The county administrator is responsible for the following fiscal services in Ottawa: accounting, accounts payable, budgeting, payroll and receivables, et cetera. And the county administrator shall perform, other such duties as the board may assign, and essentially also is a connector in the county. It sits on various boards or commissions and works with, local stakeholders as well. There is some additional information on, education, training, experience, et cetera. And I guess one thing I'll just highlight is that the county administrator has a lot of work to do connecting in all areas of the county. And so, is out and about quite a bit.
So one more comment on the text that you just read too, and that is that it comes straight from our contracts with our administrators. So it's verbatim language of what their responsibilities and duties are per the contract.
Fairly straightforward, yeah.
The executive recruitment tool that you have here for Ottawa County, Michigan County Administrator, it looks like it's GovHR.
Yeah,
This was a document that they had created. Is that accurate?
Commissioner Rhodey, you were kind of continuing along on some of that?
Yeah, do you want me to continue explaining a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, So yes, this is the profile that was in place when they last did a county administrator search. So it was in place prior to John Jay being hired. This was the one that was prepared for that process. So it's just provided for reference of what's been done in the past and what that kind of a profile has looked like in the past.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's what that is. So I believe this was created in 2021. Obviously, a lot of the data and information needed to be updated because it's, it's several years old. And so that is then what the draft document that you were provided with, a recruitment profile for county administrator is. It was going through and trying to create or pull together comparable type information and data that would be needed in creating an updated recruitment profile. And so it doesn't mean that this verbatim will be what is used, but it's just kind of core information to pass on to a recruiting firm to help so they have information to work with as they jump into the process.
So just so I'm clear, so this is just basically a format that you've used, kind of structure that you've used to create this other document here?
It's a similar
Similar
format, just,
format?
yeah,
Okay.
just making sure that we're covering similar types of information.
A lot of it's pretty high level, and didn't change. So, the composition of the county, what percentage is farmland, things like that, population growth, just making sure those numbers are updated.
Our median home value did
Mhm.
significantly, that's what I was,
Yeah, there's some definite changes.
328,000.
A lot of this information, just so you know where it came from, it was compiled from the census and from different documents within the county, like the audit, the budget. Both of those had some good information. The equalization office. So, just data that's available through the county itself, but then also through the Census Bureau. And I wouldn't expect that, this document would go out as being the recruitment profile. I would imagine a firm that we'd be working with would have their own, style or methodology of how they would want to.
It's
compile
information you're
this.
passing on to the recruitment firm. for your
Exactly.
purposes. Yep.
Yeah, that median household income is interesting. It was 69,321, or whenever this data was really from, and updated now to 81,500.
Has it kept pace with the median home value?
Mhm. Median home value, wow. 191,000 to 328,000. That sounds about right.
Oh, it does.
And some of these things, as I looked for them, I was like, are we sure?
Yeah.
So I was looking for multiple sources just to make sure that it was on track.
Mhm. Wow.
Our bachelor's degrees have gone up too, 25%.
Hmm.
Interesting. Mhm.
Well, one of the key areas that we should talk about today is in that recruitment profile, which is like under opportunities, if you will. And there's some in here that are, this is a draft document, but I guess we could review that a little bit and just take feedback. And, one of the question there is, what could a new administrator accomplish in the first year that would make them a successful hire? And I'd be happy to walk through some of these, or Commissioner Rhodey, you could if you want, either way.
Go ahead.
So I'm just going to basically take this right out of the document here, and then there's some additional key issues later. Move Ottawa County towards data-driven decisions by creating a strategic plan for the county and its departments, which includes the regular use of metrics. It's really the regular use and reporting of metrics. Any comments on that? It's been discussed a lot at the board level.
So really, the metrics are not to be developed by the administrator, but sort of, this is each department, knowing its business, coming forward with a proposal of, these are the things that we measure our success by. A lot of our departments have already done this, and so this is probably a two-step where departments in communication with the administrator kind of work through the timing of the delivery of those updates. Because, data comes year round, and some departments have different schedules of, reporting for various reasons.
Yeah, Commissioner Cosby, you've talked about this one quite a few times, talking about like cost of service delivery, taking a very intentional look at, where are the county's the taxpayer dollars going? Where are they going? Is there ROI in various aspects? What are the actual outcomes? Things like that.
Well, I think it gives kind of even this particular role direction as to where they need to concentrate their efforts. What services are being used. I'm not even necessarily looking for cost of service because some things are statutorily, get that word out, required. But, what services are under demand in our county? And then, how can we best, even as a board, or you as a board, designate or allocate resources to those particular service lines. I do think that, the new budget software that we approved and has been purchased and they're in the process of implementing is supposed to give you a reporting mechanism. So timing is, I think, relevant too, as Roger was saying, but, get a monthly report and expect that, or even for the county administrator, especially when we're being asked to add FTEs to departments, or additional resources, just a better understanding of why. And I think it keeps the community more aware as well.
Yep. Yeah, a good example might be, I know we have very strong support for law enforcement, and there's always a financial need in that area. It would be really, really helpful to just have like a kind of a constant flow of data. How is crime? I know there are dashboards. We can actually get an annual report, but building in some of those metrics that are already being captured and basically having them coordinated back to either a committee or the board level.
Yeah, and I think they are being captured and reported out. They have to be. So it's just basically just sharing that information so that we are making good decisions, or the board is making a good decision, or even the county administrator, about where to allocate resources.
This helps everybody, helps the process. Yeah. Okay, number 2, implement a standardized process of monthly measurement and reporting of individual department performance outcomes to the BOC in comparison to the annual and strategic plan goals. So basically a continuation of what we're talking about there. Continually evaluating funding requests, looking at where demand is. Number 3, complete an assessment of community needs and available resources to include a comparison with the statutory requirements of the county as related to the provision of mandated versus non-mandated services, as well as an assessment of appropriate collaborations with other government entities and nonprofit organizations. There's a lot of resources in Ottawa County. Not sure that the county has ever done a full review of what is mandated and what is non-mandated and what's being done in both buckets from that perspective. I don't know if we could very easily get a total dollar amount that's spent on non-mandated services right this second.
I think AI could be pretty helpful in some of these questions that we have as well.
Yeah, it all goes back to pulling that data forward to make it more accessible.
I think this is likely the most challenging of all the 5 listed opportunities. This is really the the meat.
Mhm.
And this is really, I think, where if you're looking at, a list of candidates, this is going to be the one that someone needs to be measured, you know.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Communications, that's a vital skill. The ability to kind of collaborate and work through is equal importance. Thoughtful, and then just the assessment of community needs. I know there's a lot of different responsibilities that our various departments, they deliver that information, they gather a lot of that information. So part of that work is determining maybe a gap of what we have and what we need to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a certain level of non-mandated services or things that the county government is providing or is doing. And they're not all equal. They're not all the same. You don't get the same outcomes or benefits from every program. So having a strong focus on that, I think moving forward, especially just considering where our economy is and where it could be in the future, is going to be critical.
Well, I think an excellent example is actually the $300 million we're spending in food subsidy in the community. And even if it's a state-run program, is that a precursor to something else that we're seeing, that we're missing potentially, or that we can intervene on early? When I have spoken with people, the not-for-profits that are responsible for food subsidies or assisting with that, they are talking about cost of housing.
Mhm.
So cost of housing being so high that they're going to the food banks and just being able to make rent
Mhm.
and or a house payment, but more often rent.
I spoke to somebody yesterday who was renting a room in a house for $800 a month. And, going out and renting now is 1,600, 2,000, whatever it is, it's very expensive. Yeah. And some of it's outside of our control, because it's very, it's a national problem. And it's actually, in some ways, an indicator of a very good problem. It's very high demand in Ottawa County
Mhm.
for people, fastest growing county, people want to live here. That's not going to suddenly change. We're not going to suddenly have a huge drop in demand and have prices plummet unless there's maybe a financial crisis in the country. So there are things that can be looked at. And I know the Housing Commission is looking at some of those items and what can they do with maybe, working with local units and looking at smaller footprint homes and things like that.
Mhm.
But it is an ongoing focus. The answer is not just government subsidized housing. That's actually the worst solution. Maybe a measure of creativity in all of this.
Personal wealth is in the home.
Mhm.
So it actually is a problem for individuals, but it demonstrates how attractive Ottawa County is.
Yes. Yeah. First world problems, as they say.
Mhm.
Fourth one, strengthen the grant approval process to improve informed decision-making, which includes weighing both the benefits and the risks or trade-offs of individual grants. Number 5, enhance communications with the people of the county through continued development of the communications department. And then there's a list of key issues. Groundwater, and some of there's a lot of work being done already, but groundwater, broadband expansion, housing, veterans, employee recruitment and retention. You could add, focus on core government services, cost management. Looking at long-term planning, looking at debt as well. It's great to hear some of our bonds are going to be paid off soon.
Mhm. Is there a plan for where that additional money goes then, when it's not paying off debt?
Good question. Good question for finance.
And I think there's a lot in CMH too, but thankfully we have Dr. Bashir's
Hmm.
covering that pretty well.
Good.
So, mhm.
There's a millage in another year or two, right?
26.
That'll be lots to work on there for CMH.
Some of the items you have in your job posting are not mentioned in the recruitment profile. I'm guessing that we're planning on using those kind of together while we're recruiting. So what I see as the job postings are the non-negotiables, or at least the guidance of what we're hoping for, and then getting a little bit more specific with the recruitment profile.
Yeah, so historically what's happened is the job posting is what actually gets put up on the county website, like in our normal
Mhm.
system. And then there's usually a link to the recruitment profile. So both are used together.
Yeah, really good information for people who may or may not be overly familiar with Ottawa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is what it is it's just more, this is what you would be looking at, walking into if you're going to consider it.
One thing I noticed was just specifically when we talked about grants as being one of our things that we would hope for a new administrator to accomplish in the first year to make them a successful hire. So someone with knowledge of working with grants would be something
That would be
that
desirable.
we're going to, yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely someone who's very strong on process, process improvement, process, project management skills in those areas. I'll always go back to the
Hmm.
administrator role is a coordinator role and sometimes is called the county coordinator. Yep.
And I would just say too, we're going to provide this document, but if a recruiting firm thinks they should just, wrap this up in a completely different way, then, whatever works.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what we'll go with.
One thing I also noticed on the job posting, essential job functions, I wondered if we wanted to add, so it's the second bullet point. It says, other than elected officials. I'm wondering if we would want to include other than elected officials in those that the board hires. So for example, we hire legal. That would be one addition that I would suggest. Because at this point in time, it says accept elected officials and their officers,
Right.
and that they appoint and remove all heads of departments,
Mhm.
so that would be my one
Just some
suggestion.
clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
by statute, it's the board.
I believe it's probably referred to sort of in the that back page of the recruiting profile maybe, or it's at least updated now on the new one. But it's a good point.
Yeah.
And so we'll want to make sure that, as we look at a contract, that different language gets into a new contract too.
We talk about groundwater for a second. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on that. We had some in our legislative meeting on Friday. Commissioner Belknap, you're on groundwater, right?
Yes.
Any just general comments on kind of where that's at?
As it relates to the conversation about the county's involvement and,
Yeah, I think
as, we talk about it from the standpoint of recruitment. There are a lot of different lanes that come into play with that. Much of the solution to, I guess, assisting our access to groundwater is land use considerations.
Hmm.
Much of that is township level. The county does not, sort of dictate, zoning regulations to the locals, but rather, we do obviously partner with our road commission, Board of Public Works, for, coordination of, running water main where it makes sense. So I think, encouraging and participating with some of the local conversation. I know Robinson Township actually has a water board comprised of, residents, and they're trying to keep an eye on development, and balancing, the agricultural use and even, sand mining. Because when you're doing a lot of sand mining, eventually you deplete and then you have these bodies of water. A lot of times those are, areas that, we see in Allendale, like have been developed for neighborhoods. So all of that sort of conversation is an element of things that we're talking about with groundwater. And I think as far as county, we work closely with our Water Resources Commissioner and the state Eagle Department for environmental concerns. So I think as it relates to recruiting, sometimes what we might be looking for is, just some, ideas that, may have worked in other communities, problems, challenges as their unique skill set, and working with the State Department, when I mean State Department, I don't mean the State Department, I mean, departments of state, Michigan. Because a lot of what happens with water withdrawal, those are decisions made in Lansing, with repercussions that happen locally. So, I think I'm pleased that it's in consideration as an important piece to, the knowledge base for, potential candidates. But even just the overall general conversation of managing growth and development at the same time, the preservation of our agricultural, and I know that's a big piece of what we're doing in strategic impact.
Could I jump on that?
Yeah,
Because that was something in that legislative meeting last week that really caught my attention. So this is a very difficult issue, and having very, very high demand and people wanting to move here. It's not just, housing costs are not unique to Ottawa County, those issues. But we do have them like everybody, or not everyone, but like many. And there are no easy solutions. And there are no short-term solutions either.
yeah,
And the comment that really caught my attention was that, there's kind of a push to reduce certain draws on our aquifers, or to manage the draw well. And one of the best ways to reduce, draw on the aquifer is to run pipeline. Then the comment was made, well, you run pipeline and development follows infrastructure.
right,
And now you lose your farmland and
Right.
your agriculture.
right,
So it's not like it's not a simple solution to just run pipe, which also costs millions and millions and millions of dollars.
yeah,
So maybe
So-
find,
Yeah, Paul in strategic impact is going to the municipalities and discussing corridors and like
Yeah.
current corridors that do exist and how we can expand upon those and
Yeah,
improve those.
in a manageable.
For housing and, and for additional development.
Yep.
Yeah. So
He-
it doesn't
he-
necessarily mean going across the fields.
Right, and he was the one making the comments that I just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very helpful, to kind of hear more perspective.
and I think that's big, in the area of work that Pat Siskevich does too at the Ottawa
Mm.
County Road Commission.
Mm.
I know I've had
Thanks.
many conversations with him, he's met with us,
Mhm.
and very much this has to be that's where the county's involved, but, the townships are the ones that really, are
They
the,
have to own it sort
They-
of
they
at the end
do.
of the day.
what do we want our community to look like and function and weigh those things because, there's just it is, it's a growing community. It's a beautiful community. Lots of potential, but at the same time, there's so much heritage that part of our beauty is that too. So, you know, and maybe that's part of this recruitment profile is more than just, you know, these are some issues, but maybe there's a little section talking about, you know, we've got great things, we've got great environment, and we have these sort of growing pains as well. You know, how much change can the community,
It's a much better problem than some of the alternatives.
right, right?
Yeah, very blessed.
And I think too, I mentioned this a lot, that, you know, when it comes to a lot of our county level, planning and facilities, you know, our parks, they have been developed very thoughtfully, in time and consideration and, so I think, you know, that whole, to be thoughtful in that way is a time, it's not a rush thing, like well, here's the demand, we're gonna meet this demand today. You know,
Right.
it takes time.
Long-term perspective.
Mhm.
I mean, even there's a strategy starting to be put together, and I will tell you, it was one of the issues that I did run on back in 22, and that wasn't happening at that time. So I'm really encouraged to hear that the conversations have gone beyond a conversation and actually into some planning
Yeah.
as well. It is a long-term strategy. There is a short-term answer, I mean, somewhat short-term, and that's what Paul's working on, Paul Sachs is working on.
Well, and I think too, you know, as we develop this sort of facility here as sort of our central, you know, hub of service, you know, part of that conversation could be, you know, do we have adequate means to get folks from different parts of the county here when they need to be? Is that, you know, something that, you know, needs to be a part of this? You know, making the facility accessible. I know we've talked about that with the, you know, ADA regulations and improvements and, you know, access. But also, you know, is this an accessible place for those that maybe aren't driving?
Also makes me think about coordination with local units.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Right.
Yeah.
I know there is a lot, but moving into
But
the future,
For this role, is there a lot of coordination with
I,
local units?
there is, and I think it should increase.
Mhm.
Now, you know, as we continue to be intentional. And that, you know, impacts, well, it's all interrelated, but if you look at number 2 on those challenges and priorities from the deputy administrator profile, that was, you know, one of the challenges and priorities was to maintain a low millage rate in the face of continued growth in the county. And, you know, Administrator Anderson has talked about it quite a few times, and what he's seen over his, you know, 30-year career in county government and things is counties grow, and then the demand for service outstrips the increase in revenue.
Mhm.
And at some point, you reach kind of a tipping point, and if you're not prepared ahead of time, it hurts worse. And so he's shared multiple times, he thinks we're definitely moving in that direction. And there's always an option. You can increase your millage rate. I don't think that's
So
going to be,
painful now. I mean, inflation is so extraordinarily high, and then to increase your millage rate as well.
right, yeah, horrible, yeah. Which no one wants to do. And then you have the continued pressures from the school systems that continually build and bond and grow, which is where most of the tax burden is from in our county. And it doesn't seem like that's stopping. No. Good challenges.
So it sounds to me like we probably want to pull up some of the challenges and priorities that were in the more recent deputy administrator profile and prioritize them in this one.
And number 3 is really good. reinforce local control amidst an ever-growing matrix of nonprofit, state, and federal activities that seek to displace the primacy of local elected officials in policymaking. And that's a major issue. That's where you have, top-down control or top-down influence, whether they're doing it with regulatory structures or the law or in grant writing, things like that. That's just a reality of the day-to-day, really. But I think we've seen in the last couple years, the state moving, the state making changes that it is actually harmful to local control, like changing the solar siting, just removing local control. So that, never know, it could continue. Then how do you deal with it?
So moving through the sort of this draft recruitment that's been kind of put together, there it looks like there's a couple things that we're gonna consult with the recruitment firm on to kind of get advice as far as what they're seeing out of the list of the folks responding to the advertisement. And those would include sort of we're going to kind of rely on them to advise on what are the mandatory requirements, like what are the minimums that, we would look at. The other one, desirable characteristics. I think in recruiting, you want to have a person, be able to, convey, they've been through various things, battle tested, if you will, on challenges. What does that look like in relation to our needs here?
Yep, and certainly if you look at the prior profile that was done, there was, quite a lot of work put into those areas. And so, we still have that we can look at. And it does seem like recruiting firms do a lot of work in this specific area too. So
Should we switch gears and talk recruiting firms a little bit, or anything else on any of this?
we'll take our feedback from today and incorporate, some changes into this before we would send it on.
Yeah.
Is there one particular person you're struggling with, or all of us?
Okay, so let's pivot then to some discussion on recruiting firms, and I guess I could start by just highlighting who had created this original, this most recent profile. So that was GovHR. They are, I think a slightly smaller firm out of the Chicagoland area. I think they had 2 people on their team, best I could tell from their website, and from what I remember from the past. Maybe they're bigger, I'm not sure. But they were recently acquired by a larger firm, and so their website is redirecting, so I can't view their website. It's kind of hard to see.
I was able to take a look at it, actually, the new
Good.
one. So looks like they concentrate kind of around the Great Lakes region, particularly Illinois, but
Yeah,
some in Wisconsin.
yep, yeah. So I think from where I sit, I think personally I'd rather see the county work with a more local firm. Nothing against GovHR, but I think I'd rather see someone local. So, all right, in addition, administration, pulled a list of firms, and some of the details, were sent out to the committee. And there's kind of a very wide mix from, some of the largest to some very small ones. I have spent quite a bit of time reaching out to contacts in West Michigan and beyond, asking for feedback, recommendations, referrals. And I've spoken with, multiple different recruiting firms and different principals. There is one that really stands out and comes highly recommended. That one's on that list. It's W Talent Solutions. They are in Grand Rapids, have a team of about a dozen, and are pretty unique, at least seem to be in their approach. They talk about kind of a proprietary search process they call Smart Hire, and talk about how it's, data-driven and uses analytics. So they're the ones who I would, like to see looked at a little bit more, and, come highly recommended, but also have been very willing to serve the county. And I. go
Looks
ahead.
like they're based right out of Grand Rapids, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a few. I've talked with quite a few in general. And, then there's, we could go to Robert Half. I mean, they do everything in the kitchen sink. But I think for me,
It's the administrator.
I'd like to see something that's a little more boutique, if that makes sense. A little more closer to home.
I agree, and it looks like we do have, from this list, a fair amount of Grand Rapids-based firms. If you had a, a second favorite, would that be of similar size? Because I know what you're saying as far as, you've got a huge firm, or you've got, a firm, that's kind of medium-sized, capable of looking at different things. And then sometimes you're, you're really stretched if it's a small firm. So, and that's not to cast any judgment based on size, because,
Right, everybody's unique.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, one thing that I really liked about W Talent was I did reach out and talk to their founder and CEO. Her name is Ashley Ward. And something that they do that I noticed that is different is they're set up and they donate 10% of their profits back to charities and nonprofits in the West Michigan area. And they're very connected in with the local community, not just through their corporate work, but through their nonprofit work. And if you look at their website and their bios and kind of what they're, showing publicly, they have a pretty strong focus on that.
When you had conversations with them, did you find that any of them were able to begin work immediately? What was,
Yeah.
how about this one?
Yeah, so when I talked to Ashley, she said that they would like the work and would like to support the county and is available. Yep. She also said that if we wanted, she could do kind of like a virtual presentation and explain their process, some of their Smart Hire, strategies and how they work to give us as a committee, more understanding of, how they're doing what they're doing. Yep.
Did you happen to chat with her at all of references for their work that we could kind of just see some of the work they've done and maybe some of their metrics of success rates of their work?
That's a good question. I didn't get too specific on that. I think any firm that we would talk to would be able to provide some references and testimonials. I mean, offhand, she said she could, which I think is a good thing to ask for. Kind of look at past successes, indicator for future success.
And then as you were kind of doing some research, did you happen to do any kind of cost comparison at all? Like, are they in the ballpark?
Yeah, pretty much anybody is going to, if they're not, billing hourly or something, they're gonna just take a percentage of the first year salary of whoever's hired. Yep. And they're all gonna be kind of relatively more or less the same.
Under professional services, they've got a good list of previous work, not specific, but
Yeah,
family office, private equity, venture capital, accounting firms, tax advisory, fintech, legal services, legal law firms.
yeah, they definitely focus on enterprise or executive level recruiting, which is one thing, as I've been looking around that I've been really paying attention to. It's a lot of firms that kind of do it all. They do contracting, they provide services, they do accounting, they do, HR. And so you can kind of get some firms that will give you anything. I'd much rather work with a firm that's maybe a little more focused on the process, because I think that is one of the main priorities for this committee, for the board as a whole, is a very excellent process. And while some of that starts here, it's really carried by whoever we work with. It's their process. And so as far as that goes, I'd love to hear more about their process and what they do, and kind of get that out in the open and say, hey, would this be a good fit? Could we work together on this and see if it's something that would, serve the county well?
When you spoke with Ashley, I guess I had kind of two questions. Is there opportunity for some of our department leadership to kind of have an opportunity to kind of voice? I know, because I've heard from some of our department heads, they've asked me questions about that, what level of involvement do they have, and
Yeah.
share their concerns and priorities, in this process. And I hope to see that, as we're working with a firm, that, there would be opportunity for, our leaders within this organization to have a
Kind of
voice. in
provide, yeah. I think they do some some surveys in their process. And sounds like a great job for the vice chair to really help with some of that coordination.
List to do. Mhm.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
And two,
I can recruit help, so.
glad to help.
Danger.
But also, just, if someone's knowledgeable of Ottawa County, and all the various things that we've talked about, and the challenge of, the growth and that type
Yeah.
of thing. That's why I think it's good to go with a local firm in West Michigan that's, familiar.
Yeah, that was one of my questions is, are you familiar with Ottawa County, with our challenges, with, the opportunities on the horizon? And the answer was yes. Yeah. And that's going to be very different than working with a firm that's 50 or 100 or 150 miles away, or
Yeah.
headquartered now in Tennessee, or whatever it might be. You could be very familiar with the job market, but we're not looking for just someone who's familiar with the job market. We want somebody who knows the heartbeat of Ottawa County, because we want to find the most qualified, excellent candidates for this role, who have some staying power, who want to be here over the long term. Yeah. Anything else about a firm, or who to work with, or?
I definitely agree with the local. Just being close and I definitely have more questions for the one that you're kind of leaning towards your, I think what was it, W Talent Solutions?
Yeah.
That I would want to ask them. Was there any other one on there that you felt that they were ready to do the work that are currently listed here, and that I think Roger had mentioned, is there a second one that you would,
Nope.
no one else was, when you say no, what does that mean? Does that mean like that no one else was available, or no one else, it didn't stand out to you?
More so like they aren't standing out. Like I'd like to work with somebody who comes highly recommended. And while we can go out and just search
Mhm.
and pull up, 10 or 20 different firms, I think I'd really put a lot of weight on a very positive reputation
When you say highly recommended, what does that mean to you?
from people who are in the community.
That you've chatted with?
Yeah.
That brought up West
Yeah.
Talent Solutions that they've used?
Yep. Yeah, I didn't find them on my own or anything.
Yep.
Yeah. And another comment on, a follow-up on what you just said, using someone who's close. I think that's really important because we're trying to handle this process in an open format and in person in some cases. I know a lot of the search is not done here, but, physically. But for presentations, for involvement, for meetings, yeah, it would be great to be able to have somebody who is geographically close. Yeah.
I appreciate the website links too, because I've been clicking through as we've been speaking. And I like the criteria from the spreadsheet across the top with a West Michigan presence. Do they have an executive focus? Do they have national reach and size of their team? And where are their locations?
Yep.
And some nice footnotes
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah, some of them, it seems to me that any organization can now claim a national reach.
Hmm.
That's what I noticed on all of my research and looking at different firms and ones that aren't even on this list. And there are some large talent networks that people are connected to. So as long as you're connected to that network, you can say you have a national reach pretty easily. I believe W Talent has several talent connections and hubs all throughout the country. So if you go to their locations, they do have pretty wide reach from New York to Detroit, Phoenix, Seattle, Dallas, et cetera, and are actively working in a lot of areas. So yes, I did put yes on national reach on all of those. A couple of them I was a little iffy, but to be fair, I just put yes.
Do you know how long they've been in practice?
Not offhand, no.
Okay.
No.
About
I
2017.
wonder if they're on here that would say,
Go for the owner's profile.
The one thing I could pull from there is that the founder has conducted over 20,000 professional candidate interviews in her career. And with a focus on C-suite and presidential, level roles, so high level roles. Which is another thing that I really liked about it.
Mhm.
A lot of firms are focusing on, no offense to them, but like they'll do anything. Like they'll do anything because you can make more money that way. Any position, at any level, they'll go out, and if you want to pay them, they'll recruit. So my feeling from W Talent, based on their website and everything else and conversations I've had, is that they're really focused on executive recruiting. And so that experience and that process is what I'm most interested in.
Because we will be asked, pay methods, some are out, it's unique to do an hourly rate. Oftentimes it is based upon the job
Right,
a percentage salary.
That's
Do
what
you
they do.
know? That's what they do.
Yeah.
Do any of them have a different methodology? I think that's the more common model. that
There
you're
are
aware
a
of.
lot of options out there. You can pretty much find anything you want. There's also some that do, I forget the term, but it's basically like retainer based. You just hire them. So there are a lot of options. But what is pretty common is just a percentage of the salary.
Salary.
Was this the only firm that you've talked with or spent any time with?
No, I've talked with multiple and reached out to a lot of different contacts. Whether they were just, business or, being in the business community in West Michigan for the last, 15 years is a lot of what I leaned on, and talking to a lot of people and had some really good conversations with different firms. And, this is, at least as far as, this is the one that came really highly recommended. And it kind of makes sense too. They're local, they're not real small, they're not really large, they're kind of in a sweet spot. And they've done a lot of executive level, high level placements, and that's also their focus. So I guess being likable helps too. So.
It'd be great to meet with them from my perspective. I don't know if you've chatted with them about that potential, if our committee felt like they were worth pursuing, but
Yeah, if the committee would like to hear from them, because I think that would be really helpful to build more understanding. They are available and can do a presentation. They can present virtually, walk through some of their process, and I think that will give us a much better ability to assess, what it's like, and to ask some, direct questions of the, of the firm itself. Experience, how they work.
Mhm.
They talk about benchmarking, assess and hire. I'd like to kind of hear more about that specific process. And I guess they've developed the smart hire approach, which is some, proprietary to them.
Looks like she's got a tool that she uses.
Yep. So, yeah, they said they could, meet this week. They're available tomorrow. We have committee meetings tomorrow. We could ask them if they could, just do some sort of presentation or discussion, maybe after finance, go from there.
I think most of us would be here tomorrow.
I'll be here all day.
Me too.
Me too.
I have
Okay.
morning
I would-
meetings and afternoon. I
Yep,
think.
same.
It works for me as well.
Well, I guess what we could do is we could recess and reconvene tomorrow after finance, and hear from them and just see if it's helpful.
Oh my God.
Bring some really good questions.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think we need that opportunity to, present questions and,
Yeah,
hear from them.
Mhm.
yep, definitely. Okay, anything else?
No, I think, and if we meet tomorrow, if there's a little bit of extra time, if any of us maybe wants to peruse some of what was shared today, there's extra thoughts that maybe come up between
Yeah, I
now
would
and
like-
tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd like an opportunity to look through these other options as well. And then,
Yeah, there's
That
no.
we could continue the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's no, these are draft and there's no specific timeline or anything. And really, our job is just to try to do our very best and make sure the information is in here, as it needs to be. I did think the job description was really good. I didn't see anything major that was missing or anything like that. And The recruitment profile, I know a lot of work went into updating this. And so while it is really good, definitely can use some more discussion and continual improvement. And really, it's not like anything is set in stone. It
No.
needs to be, it needs, I think, a lot of direction and guidance and feedback from, other stakeholders, other board members, administration, and especially any firm, any independent firm that we work with. I think they will want, to take this and kind of do something with it,
Probably. Yeah,
which I would.
change verbiage but we're
Right.
very fortunate. It's unusual to have somebody in the role that actually will help write the job description for you. They
Yep.
know it pretty intimately. So.
Yeah, and build into the process.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you to John.
very thankful.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep, and to administration for all the help.
Yes.
Thanks, Ben.
Mhm.
Yep, and Jordan. Mhm. Okay. I will get some of these documents over so we can get them added to the packet, just if anybody wants to look at them. And I didn't put draft on these. I'll just make sure I put draft on them. Just for clarity.
Absolutely.
And I guess if there's nothing else, we could recess. Pick it up, I think, probably tomorrow. Somebody want to just motion for recess till tomorrow? And I think finance will be done by maybe 11:30,
Hopefully, yeah.
hopefully.
So what time are you thinking?
Not a
tomorrow?
huge agenda.
You want-
Probably noon.
Noon, okay,
Mhm. Yep.
right.
Same time.
Okay, so motion to recess till noon.
So moved?
We're in the middle of a meeting, sir.
Tomorrow, because we recessed. If we recess, then tomorrow we'll still have, it will be like a continuation of where the meeting's currently at.
Yes, there'll definitely be public comment. Absolutely. Yep. Support?
Support.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.